This is a true story. I spent more than 5 years in Puerto Vallarta with side trips to Monterrey, Lerado, Yelapa, Sayulita, the small town of San Francisco, and Bocaa de Tamaloan, all here in Mexico. My rent was $400 a month, including all utilities and internet, for a small studio apartment overlooking the sea. Of course, when baby boomers started retiring at a rate of 10,000 a day, yes, 10,000, hundreds of people began showing up at the Puerto Vallarta International Airport without a return ticket to the United States. I lived there for a little over 5 years after retiring early and purchasing a one-way ticket from the San Francisco International Airport to Puerto Vallarta. During this 5-year time, I set the stage for my new life. I took lessons on how to write fiction online. I had Post-it notes all over the small studio apartment to help me remember the rules of writing. I wrote a CIA light thriller fiction book series. The problem was I never had the cash flow to afford a good editor, and readers were cruel in the reviews on Amazon. I am grateful. Over 7 years later, I was finally able to send one book in the series to a world-renowned editor. Good editors are really expensive. In those days, we found apartments on Craigslist, and that's how I found my seaside view apartment. In today's climate, we use Airbnb. No problem. After I got kicked out of my studio apartment, the rent went way up. I moved to a small town called Paso Ancho, which is located on the mountainside of Puerto Vallarta. I rented an apartment twice the size, modern, with a raging river right across the street. The rent was around $250 a month, and I paid the utilities. 6 months later, I left the Puerto Vallarta area altogether and headed to the world's most dangerous city, Acapulco. I didn't know what to expect, but let me assure you, there were then and now thousands of visitors in town each weekend from Mexico City. Yes, when I first arrived, there were lots of guns, police, state police, and federal police walking around in groups of threes with semi-automatic weapons. Plus, the first time I arrived in Acapulco, I rented an apartment 2 blocks up from the Zocalo. Now, this is the main square in Old Town Acapulco. The locals in Acapulco earn less money each month on the average than the locals in Puerto Vallarta. The people here in Acapulco earn between $400 to $600 a month, if that, and a little more in Puerto Vallarta area. Now, the locals in Mexico City earn substantially more than either Puerto Vallarta or Acapulco. However, the cost of living in Mexico City is so much more affordable than housing in Puerto Vallarta or even here in Acapulco, when you are talking about oceanfront condos with a private beach area. I came to Acapulco to learn more about the Hollywood gang and why 3 recent U.S. presidents visited Acapulco before becoming president of the United States of America. I remember hearing my father talk about Acapulco when I was a small child. I left Acapulco the first time after 3 months and went to Cabo San Lucas, a beautiful place, yet expensive. I was not able to secure a rental with a view for under $1,000 a month. So I returned to Acapulco, where I could rent a view for less, much less. This time I rented in a luxury neighborhood for $230 a month with a view, pool, security guard at the street entrance. This was a neighborhood for wealthy businessmen and doctors. In fact, I was renting the maid's quarters of the ex-wife of a doctor. I rented the main house for a couple of months, but that was way too expensive. So when the couple moved out, one of the maid quarters, I quickly moved in. Now, I had 2 different lifestyles to compare in Acapulco. And let me tell you, all neighborhoods are not, and I repeat, are not created equally. Everyone had a swimming pool, a maid, and a gardener. The mansion next door was rented out to groups from Mexico City almost every weekend. They played loud music and partied by the pool, while I did the same all by myself at my pool. Everyone had a fantastic view of the city and the sea, and the streets were clean with no stray dogs. The income of my neighbors was way above the average income of the local people in Acapulco. These were people of enormous wealth compared to Mexico's regular standard of living. And guess who owned one of the houses on the street? You got it. A retired U.S. expat from Detroit, of all places. The pandemic set in. The world went a little crazy. After being on lockdown for 7 months, I moved to Puerto Escondido for 5 months. What happened was I paid for a flight, an airline ticket flight. I thought I might go somewhere different because of the pandemic. They canceled my flight and did not refund my money. So I spent phase 1 of the lockdown in a wealthy neighborhood. No problem. Even though I had the internet, I was alone. Not lonely, but alone. I couldn't even go down the street and drink coffee with my American expat buddy. I did not break any of the rules. Mask on, no visitors except the maid, no problems. I found out I could catch a bus to Puerto Escondido. So I took the 8-hour long trip along with all of my belongings, and I booked myself into a $500 a month open air apartment across the street from the Pacific Ocean. The price was to increase during peak season, and I made arrangements through Airbnb to move 3 blocks down the street to a cheaper apartment. The booking was canceled because the owner's husband got COVID-19. Now, Puerto Escondido was a little laxed on the COVID-19 protocol. And realizing this, I returned to Acapulco and rented a luxury 2-bedroom condo overlooking the city, the bay, the port, and a partial view of the ocean, all for $450 a month. Mind you now, the pandemic is still going on when I first rented the condo. I paid the electricity bill, which is about 430 pesos every other month. Now, I do not run the AC. That is way too expensive. I purchased a couple of fans from Walmart, and that is how I stay cool. The biggest events in my life during this pandemic is going to the grocery store. Yes, I go downtown and shop, and even to my favorite beachfront bar for cocktails to watch the sun go down. Now I will return to the United States for a limited time before jetting off to a Caribbean island. My intention is to get the vaccine when in the United States. The thing is, in most developing countries, there are very few people who have been vaccinated. And if I am to continue to travel, mostly because I have no home, then I feel the need for added protection. Or not. You may be asking yourself, why don't I have a home? Well, I was born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'd rather live well in another country than to live in poverty in the United States. It's all about choices.